My father was an alcoholic by the time I was born, and I never thought of him as being especially close or able to understand or to guide me. And I always felt a sense of ambivalence about him, and I think that was transferred over to other males too. And name calling as I got older, and sort of owning the names from time to time. Somebody might say faggot or queer, and what's the matter, don't you like girls or something. Although I dated girls and even went into sexual relationships with them, I always felt like I owned those times when I was called a queer faggot, like they were somehow sensing that. And I felt an otherness. I just did. I felt a special a sensitivity to those names when called that, even if they were just said in passing like they would to anybody else. Nevertheless, those kind of guys, when they said it, really hurt. So those things can worsen it too. But I did feel like that. Yeah, I guess there's a classic mold to it.
Well, I was raised as an Episcopalian. Well, I think my family, with me, darkened the threshold maybe 10 times in my up through high school. Certainly not when I was in high school. And it was 1979, and I was very much entrenched in the gay lifestyle. At the same time, I was pursuing an acting career in Hollywood, which was going nowhere. And I was dabbling in a lot of drugs, not even dabbling, doing a lot. And I was at a friend's house, and I OD'd on what I thought was snorting a half a gram of cocaine. I was alone in their house.
And it turned out to be pure PCP, but what I thought at the time was cocaine. In any case, within minutes, someone came home. I was at somebody's house alone. They came home and found me passed out, and they called the paramedics, and when they came, my heart had fibrillated, and they got out the defibrillators and got it going again. It was during that part of the experience of that overdose that I had what people call a near-death experience, which is going over the other side and going through the tunnel and coming into a being of light, which at the time I knew that I had died. I could identify it, even though that I didn't know that I had overdosed. I knew that something very radical had happened. And I came into the presence of this being, and I saw my life flash in front of my eyes.
So the paramedics came, and then they defibrillated me and got my heart going again. And in that experience, unbeknownst to everybody there, I had crossed over to the other side. I didn't realize I'd OD'd, obviously, thinking I was doing cocaine. It ended up being this other horrific drug. I mean, both of them are bad. But this one was enough to kill me. And I went through this experience that we've all heard about now of coming out of this darkness into this light. And I just knew. I thought, I've died. I've left whatever it was behind. I don't know how I got here, but I'm now in the presence of, instinctively, I said to myself, this is Jesus. And then over some period of time, I have no idea how long this was, he said, Jonathan, I want to show you your life. And I said, okay. I didn't even have to talk. There was this dialogue going on, and my thoughts were being read. It didn't seem strange. And I was in the presence of this blinding but wonderfully life-giving light. I felt like I was in the presence of living knowledge and absolutely unconditionally loved. It was a wonderful experience. But then he showed me my life, and it was like living it in 3D. Again, I don't know how long it took. It seemed like not long, but I lived everything. In other words, I was even aware of the thoughts I was thinking of dialogue with people. When I was thinking, I hate you, I don't like you, you're mean, you're ugly. I remembered those and was there in the moment. And at the end of it, the Lord said to me, Jonathan, what did you see? And I said, oh, God, it was all negative. It was all destructive. And he said, is that all you see from your life? And I said, that's it. There's nothing there. There's nothing good. And then it was sort of I suppose a falling away. I don't remember that very specifically, but then I woke up where I was indeed in a hospital, strapped down, over the next 3 days, my brother and his wife, who were Christians, were interceding, praying over me, and calling Oral Roberts Prayer Tower, everything just for prayer.
And out of that experience, I came to want to search out God, and immediately it became a draw or desire to find Jesus. And
why Jesus? Why not Buddha?
well, because Jesus was the most personable expression of God, the most approachable one. And I have to say, I was still in the gay lifestyle, and everything in the gay lifestyle was saying, don't pick Jesus. You know, oh, you know what Jesus says about homosexuality, or at least the Christianity does. But honestly, the lure of wanting to have a spiritual relationship with God, and in particular Jesus, seemed to me the most attractive. It just was. But I didn't stop participating in the gay lifestyle. I mean, I got in a relationship with a man not too long afterwards, but I also went through the sinner's prayer, accepted Christ as my Lord and Savior, and was baptized a year to the day that I had the drug overdose. And yet I thought I could be a gay Christian, and that God somehow would bless a monogamous relationship. I would find this man, you know, this ultimate relationship. And it didn't happen. And at one point, really 2 years after I made that commitment to Christ, I said to the Lord, I'm willing to be made willing. And right now, I'm not going to get into a relationship or seek one with another man. I'm going to seek a relationship with you, whatever that may mean, a closer one. And hopefully that I can understand how you could lure me to you and then tell me that homosexuality was not right, even though that's what I feel I am. And he eventually led me to some Christians, to some tapes that really showed me what God's will and intent was for me, and that my identity was no longer in what I do or feel, but in who Christ is and who He is.
And so I thought, when I went to this one church, I felt this presence, and I thought, wow, this spiritual presence is what I was feeling, that love in heaven. This is the connection. It is Jesus. That's what I need now. That's my second chance.
Your passion beats for Christ alone. Your passion.
I have AIDS, and I found out that I was HIV positive in 1985 when somebody that I was reaching out to said, I really appreciate this, that you're reaching out, and some of your volunteers have been coming around and visiting me. He said, but have you been tested? And I said, well, I'm sure I'm negative. I haven't had any sexual encounters for 4 years. That's when I stopped all sexual contact, about a year after I became a Christian. And I said, I'm fine. So, but if you think I should, he goes, well, yeah, you should. You know, it can remain dormant. And I thought, okay, fine. But, you know, at that time I was going to the Vineyard, and John Wimber was talking about power evangelism, power healing. And I thought, wait, I'm in the midst of all these people that believe in power healing, raising the dead. So for sure, I don't have the virus. So I went to get tested. And so it was quite an eye-opener. And it was devastating the day I found out that indeed I did have the virus in me. It was active. And so then the ministry that had begun as a prayer group for people with AIDS and then an outreach then became something very personalized for me. And that's when I started a support group for people with HIV and or AIDS. And it was in 1997 that I went to get tested again, as I would do every year, to find out just how I was doing physically, and I was doing great. My T-cell count, which was an indicator of how far along I was, how fast the virus was replicating in my body, my level was okay. It was decent. It was the low end of healthy, the very low end. But I was fine about it. But I said to the doctor, listen, if it gets to be 100 or less, which is extremely low, 200 or less in your T cell count is considered by the Center for Disease Control as an indicator that you are going on to get an illness. You have AIDS. And I said, if it gets to be that, I'll consider medication. But I really don't want to fix something that isn't broken. I don't have any of the illnesses. And so, sure enough, in 1997, and this is 12 years after I found out I was HIV positive, the doctor said, your T cell count is 100, less than 100. And so that's when I went on the new drug cocktail, which really was showing wonderful results. It was great timing. The ones prior to that were simple and kind of crude and hard on the body. And so that's when I began taking medication. And I think the teachings that I was developing, that I was writing, became much more personal for me, much more personal. And I started relating to these chapters on treatments and faith all of a sudden, you know, where's my witness? Why aren't I healed? Why is this virus in me still after all this prayer that I've gotten? You know, I've been surrounded by all these Christians with who have faith for healing, physical healing. And yet I still have this indicator in my body, and I'm physically okay. And the Lord said, you know, Jonathan, I'm so much bigger than the medications. Don't focus on them as if they're an indication of how sick you are. This is there for your help. And I had people that got around me and said, you know, I'm on medication for diabetes. And all of a sudden, these people in this healing church were talking about how many meds they were on. Oh, for heart disease and this and that. And so they just really weren't that upset that I had to take medication all of a sudden. So I thought, oh, this is okay. This is all right. It's okay for Christians to have to take medication. And indeed, here we are about 12 years later. And there was a period while I was off the meds, I'm back on them again, and I'm doing fine. So it's been a ministry that was at once or initially an outreach to people who were more sick than I, and then I became they. And that's really affected the way that myself and my other leaders minister. And the ones that have been raised up to teach and to travel with me around the world are people that come out of various illnesses, even caregivers. The question for Christians is, where are you, Lord, right now? Show yourself to me, please. And what are you doing? Or what are you doing in the midst of this? What are you showing me? Redeem this moment. And that's what I do for everything. I've had cancer now twice. I've gone through 8 months of chemotherapy. Last year I had prostate surgery. When I was recovering from that, I said, Lord, I get the pain thing. Okay, I got it. All right, there's pain. But come on. Is there really something redemptive in all this? And indeed, I did have an experience in it, which really is not relatable now. But he came. And I said, I don't want to miss out on any of this if my observations and this experience can be redemptive to somebody else. And so I've said, Lord, I want this pain redeemed. And if it's only to have more empathy for somebody else, to say this is the human experience, we'll probably, until we get to heaven, we'll never know why. Some really wonderful people and leaders suddenly have an auto accident, you know, or are murdered. Why does that happen? I don't know. I've just learned one thing. Don't look at the why, because the final answer will be in heaven for us. But where are you, Lord? And what are you doing? And what are you showing me? And would you redeem this for me in some way? That this isn't just my experience that I may recover from, but this is also, if you will, a touchstone for somebody else who's struggling with an issue. It may be much less than what I went through, but they can say, if you've come through that with your faith still intact, then I can get through mine. And it is about sharing this with others. It's not about you in isolation with the Lord figuring this out. It's always about reaching out to others. Maybe this is the first time in your life you've been disabled and you've always accomplished it on your own. This is your time for the Lord to redeem that part of your personality that reaches out and allows others to be a more intimate part in helping you to live. I don't know. But for me, that's what I've seen. And I wouldn't even be here today if it hadn't been the prayers of the saints, who've had a lot more faith for my life, long life, than I ever have. So I'm grateful that they spoke in and came into my life to help me to see life more fully.
Pure passion that beats for Christ alone.